Hi YouTube, welcome to another edition of Horror Hands, and for this video I'm going to be talking about Oscar winning horror films. So it doesn't happen very often, but occasionally Hollywood will recognise an awesome horror film and it will win an Oscar or two. And I thought it would be interesting to go through some of the movies that I own that have won an Oscar at some time or another. And if you're new to horror, or if you don't watch many horror films and you're looking for some recommendations, I don't think you can go wrong with an Oscar-winning horror film. So to start off the video, I'll give you an interesting, albeit slightly depressing fact, and that is, in the history of the Oscars, only 6 horror films have ever competed for the top prize, that being Best Picture. Those films were The Exorcist, Jaws, Silence of the Lambs, The Sixth Sense, Black Swan and Get Out. And out of those 6 movies, only one of them ever won Best Picture. Which one was it? Stay tuned and I will talk about it later in this video. But the first movie to talk about is Alien. Alien won the 1980 Oscar for Best Visual Effects, which is really cool. And as much as I love Alien, I always forget that it's an Oscar-winning film. And it kind of made me think that horror movies don't really shout about the fact that they win Oscars. A lot of mainstream Hollywood movies now tend to lead with sort of winner of 12 Oscars, nominated for 10 Academy Awards. Whereas horror movies don't really shout about it, which is an interesting concept. But yeah, Alien won the 1980 Oscar for Best Visual Effects. The next movie is Aliens. And this won 2 Oscars in 1987. This won Best Effects, which was very well deserved for the Queen Alien alone, and Best Sound Editing. So that's really cool. Next movie is An American Werewolf in London, and this won the 1982 Oscar for Best Makeup, which it had to, of course, had to win that one. Next movie is Beetlejuice, and this won the 1989 Oscar for Best Makeup. And you'll start to see there's a little bit of a pattern with what these types of movies do well at in the Oscars. Next movie is Black Swan. So like I say, this one was in the running for Best Picture. Unfortunately, it didn't win that. But it did win the 2011 Oscar for Best Leading Actress. That would have been Natalie Portman. Next movie is Bram Stoker's Dracula. Now this won 3 Oscars, if I can read my own notes. This won the Oscar for Best Costumes, which I can totally see with its lavish production, Best Effects and Best Sound Editing. So that's that one. Next up is The Exorcist, another movie that was in the running for Best Picture. And if you go back and read about like the 1974 Oscars, it's very interesting because there's a lot of talk of like the devil taking over the proceedings and things like that. It's all very strange, but unfortunately it didn't win Best Picture, but The Exorcist did win 2 Oscars for Best Writing and Best Screenplay. Next up is The Fly, another one that I totally didn't realise was an Oscar-winning film. And The Fly won the 1987 for Best Makeup, another one very well deserved. Next up is Jaws. Another one that was in the running for Best Picture. Unfortunately, it didn't win that. It lost out to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which is a more than worthy winner of that title. But Jaws did win 3 Oscars. It won Best Sound, Best Editing and Best Music. Next up is Peter Jackson's version of King Kong. And this one won a few Oscars in 2006. It won Best Sound Mixing, Best Sound Editing, and Best Visual Effects. which you can understand from a movie like that. Next up is Misery. So Kathy Bates won the 1991 Oscar for Best Leading Actress for this movie, and again, very well deserved for her performance in that movie. Next up is the Omen, and this won the 1977 Oscar for Best Music, which again, I completely agree with. I love the music in the Omen. I think it's really creepy, so nice to see that that won. Next one is the Phantom of the Opera, and this goes right back to the 1944 Oscars, and this movie won Best Cinematography and Best Art Direction. Next up is Rosemary's Baby, and for the 1969 Oscars, Mia Farrow won Best Leading Actress. Very well deserved. Okay, next one, the big one, is Silence of the Lambs, and this collected a total of 5 Oscars. This is the movie that won Best Picture, the only horror film in history to do so, and it also won in 1992 the Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Director and Best Writing. So this one really did well at the Oscars, and after that became a psychological thriller, not a horror film, but it is a horror film. So very successful was Silence of the Lambs. Next movie is Sleepy Hollow, and this won the 2000 Oscar for Best Art Direction. Next up is Sweeney Todd, and this won the 2008 Oscar for the same thing, Best Art Direction. And the last movie is a little bit of a surprising one for me. The remake of The Wolfman, which really didn't do all that well when it was released, but actually won the 2011 Oscar for Best Makeup, which is interesting. So I hope you enjoyed that. I certainly found that to be a rather interesting project to look up. Let me know what you thought. Let me know if there's any horror films that you think really should have got more appreciation in terms of Oscars and awards. And I'll end by saying that I don't really ask for thumbs up and things like that. That's your choice if you do that. But if you do think that horror movies should get more representation at these kind of things, leave me a thumbs up and leave your support for horror films. That'd be really cool. So thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for more videos.